we'll try not to bore you with some of the parts of it, but what I want to do primarily is get into a little bit of the background, and then preparation, a little bit of the preparation that we went through to get ready for it, because we had no idea what we were getting into. And then we'll talk about the mission. That's going to be probably the primary gist of the briefing, and then we'll give you a little bit on the aftermath of what happened. So, Colonel Major, we really appreciate you inviting us over. General Trask, we're glad to see you show up. It was a nice surprise for us. And for all the guys that have been helping out this morning, we've just been overwhelmed with your hospitality and everything that we've been through today. So with that, Sam and I are going to kind of Huntley-Brinkley this for you. And like I say, we'll hold the questions to the last. But if you have a really burning question that you really would like answered at the time, just raise your hand or jump up and say, hey, what about whatever? And we'll try to answer that. But with that, this picture is of the Talon 1, Combat Talon. We were flying this airplane at the time. And I'll go through a little bit of the background. This was a definite result of that whole operation and a lot of other airplanes that were follow-on to that operation. So when we got to Hurlburt in 1978, we were told, you probably won't be here very long because Special Ops is dying. And things were going away. They were sending airplanes to the boneyard. In fact, there were very few airplanes left. We only had, at the time, I guess it was like 12 flying MC-130E models. And that doesn't spread around very far. There was 4 in the Pacific, 4 in Europe, and we had the rest there at Hurlburt. So most of the ones in Europe and some of the ones at Hurlburt were Fulton recovery qualified or equipped, and we were still doing that at the time. So I might throw in a couple of things about the Fulton system as we go along. The guy that started this whole thing off, the Shah of Iran, came to power in 1953, and I'll have a chronology of some events that happened here. But he was one of the main players, and he was in charge in Iran at the time, and he was trying to modernize Iran back in the 50s and 60s and early 70s. But there was a lot of resentment from the Muslim community, and I think it was when he changed over and says, okay, we're going to start using, I think the Grecian calendar or whatever it is, whatever we use here. And the people really resented that because they wanted to stay with their old Islamic calendar or Muslim calendar, and he started getting, I guess, disliked quite a bit. This was the guy that was causing a lot of problems, and they exiled him, and he went to France and was there for most of the time through, I guess, the 60s and 70s. When the Shah came down with cancer, they brought him to the U.S. to treat him because it was one of the few places where he could get good treatment. And when he left, then the Ayatollah came back into Iran, and that's what started stirring up all the people at that point. Jimmy Carter was the president, and was the guy kind of in charge at the time, and was the guy that finally said, "Okay, let's go get the hostages." Brzezinski was the National Security Advisor. He was kind of the hawk of the staff. And then we had Cyrus Vance, who was kind of the dove. He really didn't want us doing anything military to go after the hostages. So, as a matter of fact, after the mission, he resigned. He was so disappointed in what happened. A couple of the guys there, General David Jones was the Commander of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Him and Lou Allen was the Air Force Chief of Staff at the time. I just will throw out I got a little feather in my cap. They came down to Hurlburt, and I got to fly both of these guys, not at the same time, but on different missions to demonstrate the Fulton recovery system. So I always thought that was a good deal for me, actually. Lieutenant General James Vaught was the Eagle Claw Task Force Commander. He was the Pentagon, and most of the planning took place basically just about right outside his office in that area of the Pentagon. I think he just recently passed away. A real tough as nails guy, kind of a General Patton type individual, but he was good to work for. Then we had, basically, this kind of represents the Delta Force, the Army Special Forces guys, and all the other guys that were thrown in there that we were working with and started working with as soon as the hostages were taken. This is one of the bikes we developed, a lot of procedures. They were kind of using these procedures before this came about, but when the thing went down and we decided we're going to have to go get those people, they really started using the bikes and the MVGs and all that other stuff. So this is a kind of a typical CCT guy, and you can see what he looked like when he was out working with us. He was loaded down with all kinds of stuff. And then some of you may or may not recognize some of these guys. This was the Delta Force guys, one of the first groups that we started working with. They kept us separated for the most part. Anytime you're working with these guys, it was basically considered almost top secret, and we didn't associate with these guys very much, not until much later in time. You can, and taking a picture of these guys was strictly verboten. So, in fact, we had one crew that we're going to flash pictures of all the different crews that flew on this. One of the crews, one of the Delta guys saw them taking pictures of the crew, and they thought that they had taken some pictures of the Delta guys, and they grabbed the guy's camera and they exposed the film. So there's one crew we don't have pictures of. John Carney, if you guys have worked with combat controllers, John Carney was in charge of the combat control team at the time, and these are some of his guys that we were working with pretty closely. Again, this the Talon, just known as the Talon, combat Talon at the time, but now they kind of refer to it as the Talon 1. You can see the full recovery system that's there on the nose, which was it wasn't brought into play, but it was used in the planning and what we anticipated that we might need to use that if we had to. Some of the other assets we had KC-135s. At the time we started working with these guys, we had never done comm out refuelings. So we got these guys and we said, hey, how are we going to do this? And we worked up the procedures along with a lot of other procedures that had never been used before. And we figured out that if we got to a certain point in time and space and they flew over the top of us and got out in front of us, then we could go up and get gas and never talk to them. These were the 53s that initially started out with Navy guys flying the 53s. They had some problems with security in ComSec out at Laguna, which is where these guys were in isolation, and they finally changed over and started using the Marines to fly the 53s. This kind of gives you a timeline, starting with 1953 when the Shah of Iran returned to power. His father had actually been the initial Shah, and then he came back in and came back there. In 1964, Khomeini was exiled because of the opposition to the Shah. In '78, the riots started after the Shah was trying to westernize, like I said, the country, and he left shortly thereafter in '79 to come to the States for cancer treatment. Khomeini returns and from exile, and in '79 they got everybody so worked up that in November the 4th they overran the U.S. Embassy and took 66 hostages at the time. They released a few of them in November of '79, November 20th. They released 13 hostages. Plus there were like 5 or 6 that had wound up sneaking out and going to the Canadian embassy. Anybody see the movie Argo? Yeah, if you've seen that, it deals primarily with those 5 or 6 people that made it to the Canadian embassy, and it just mentions in there that the U.S. is working on some kind of military operation. I think that was about the only thing that was mentioned in there as far as that goes. April 1st, they created the Islamic Republic of Iran, and in April 7th, the U.S. we broke diplomatic relations with Iran. And then on April 24th and 25th is the night we ran the operation, which was, we'll talk a lot about that here in a minute. Then on January 20th of '81, Reagan was sworn in as hostages, and the hostages were released. So they were deathly afraid, I think, of Reagan and what he might do at the time, so they just released the hostages at that point. Some of the air support assets in 1980, we didn't have a whole lot. We had the Talon 1, basically. We had some EC-130s, ABCCC. Now, why ABCCC? And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. We had the RH-53Ds, basically a heavy lift helicopter that could carry, what was it, about 20 or 25 people, I think. So that was the airplane that they were going to use to go get the hostages when they overran and recaptured the hostages. But we had no simulator or rehearsal device back then. It was kind of, and we had no manual, it was all manual mission planning. We had no computer-aided mission planning system, so it was pull out the charts, draw the lines, and that was how we did it. Some of the other things about the Combat Talon, it had a TF radar that came out of the F4. We had a first generation INS, which was not very good, but we had two of those, right? We had a dual INS or just one. So there wasn't any redundancy as far as the INS. And anything drifted off all the time, and the nav was always having to do updates for it. We did have a FLIR, and it wasn't that bad a FLIR at the time, but it was right behind the nose gear. And in order to put the gear down, you had to raise the FLIR, because the nose gear door would come back and it would run into that FLIR that was there. We did have radar altimeters, but we only had one at the pilot's position. We had an EWO and RO console in the cargo compartment, and that took up 2 pallet positions. So when it came time to need some gas, we figured we could probably use bladders, but we could only get one in the Combat Talon. And that's the reason we went over and got the ABCCC, because it had a full cargo compartment if we pulled out that capsule. And with a full cargo compartment, the other thing we needed was the air refueling capability, and the EC-130s were the only ones that had that. So that's the reason we brought in 3 EC-130s to carry the gas, but we needed the Talons to help kind of lead us in there with their sophisticated systems. And the FLIR, we only had 4 airplanes at the time that were equipped with the FLIR, so it kind of limited our capabilities there. This was the nav station, and Talon 1, we actually carried 2 navigators, plus an EWO and a radio operator that was in the back. Okay, some of the mission factors and some of the obstacles that we came up against was basically, one was the time and distance, and the locations. And the big question was, well, why don't we run some kind of Entebbe operation to go in there and get them? Well, we didn't have a runway that was right next to the embassy, and we just didn't have the means and the way to get there to do that. So those were 2 of the big constraints that we had to overcome. You can see here, they had we had to get into Iran, and Tehran is clear up here close to the Caspian Sea. And how are you going to get there? Well, we really didn't have any good friends in that area. We kind of were friends with Saudi Arabia and Egypt. We finally were able to work a deal, and Oman allowed us to use Masira, which is an island just off Oman, and that's where we launched the operation from for the fixed-wing airplanes. And the helicopters were coming off the Nimitz down here in the Arabian Sea. Another one was the element of surprise. And the element of surprise was, okay, we're just going to have to keep this only to the people who are involved in it. So we had crews in the squadron who didn't know what we were doing until we actually had run the operation. So some of our good friends, might come running by the house and say, hey, what are you guys doing down there? Well, I can't tell you. And even the maintenance guys that we took with us when we deployed, a lot of them didn't know where we were going or what we were doing until we got there. And we finally told them we initially deployed to Wadi Kina in Egypt, and that's kind of where they found out what was really going on. So the other big thing there, again, was we went to Egypt, and we were initially started at Wadi Kina for the 8th SOS and some of the other assets. The guys from the 1st SOS out of Okinawa went straight to Masira, Oman. And they kind of set up everything, had the tents ready for us when we got there, coming the other way, we went down the Red Sea, flew the fence basically, all the way down and around to Masira, and that's where we finally joined up to run the operation out of. nobody knows a lot about what was going to happen on night one. This was going to be a 2-night operation, and the first night we were going to go from Masira here and go up, and we were going to get to Desert One, which is where we were going to refuel the helicopters. And that was our main reason for going there. Take all the players in there, the Rangers, the Delta, and everybody else that was going to be in the operation, and they were going to transload there to the helicopters, who were going to go up to a hide site and hide there. Then all the ground guys, the Delta and the Rangers and all Special Forces guys, were going to go into Tehran and hide in a warehouse. And then the next night, they were going to take over the embassy, get our hostages, and at that point, the helicopters were going to go to a logger site and wait there until they got a call and said, okay, come get us. So that's kind of how the next night was going to go, was the helicopters were going to come from the hide site to the logger site and then in to pick up the guys. And there were going to be airplanes coming again from Egypt all the way across to the evacuation site, which is Mansouriya, which was south of Tehran. We didn't run anything out of Egypt to begin with because Saudi Arabia was only going to let us go through there one time. And that was all they were going to say. So we couldn't go across and then come back out. So we were going to go across the second night, air refuel down here, and then probably recover at Tehran and Masira to finish up everything. We had no covert lighting at the time. All we had were bright lights. So initially, and this is what we finally wound up with, we had we got some IR lenses and put on the landing lights. But initially, we got some what they call theatrical paper, which was IR, and we put that on the landing lights that we had. And but we had to be careful because when we got too slow, the heat of the lights would melt through the paper, and so we'd have to turn those lights off about 60 knots. We did get some taxi lights. We used the taxi lights, and then we got a pair of lights off of some old tanks, some IR lights that we would put on the gear doors, so we could use the landing lights to initially land, but then we had to go to the taxi lights to get around on the ground. Airlift capability. Not a whole lot of airlift capability that we couldn't just go out and grab a bunch of 141s and C5s and stuff like that and start hauling all this stuff over there. We had to be very discreet about it so that we wouldn't tip anybody's hand. So that was a little bit of a problem. That we did have the RH-53s. They did have a heavy load capacity, but they had no TF capability. They had limited electronic sensors, so and they had no integrated avionics. They did bring in a palletized INS, and from what I understand, the palletized INS had to be, geared up and spun up on steady ground. So they spun up those INSs, took them out to the ship, put them on the helicopters, and that's when they ran the mission. Again, it was not very accurate, but that's what they had to use. Again, the secure radios, they pulled the secure radios out of the helicopters. We had secure radios in most of our airplanes. Mine didn't work, never did work, and so when I'll talk a little bit about a problem that we had with that when we departed Masira, and then they had no air refueling capability. And that was the reason we had to take gas to them to refuel them in the desert so that they could go on and still have enough gas to run the operation and get back to Mansouriya with the hostages. We were told that we would probably take fuel in that next night to refuel the helicopters so we could get them back to the ship or someplace. Otherwise, they were just going to blow up the helicopters at Mansouriya. Okay, here we had, the reason we went to get the EC-130s is the MC-130, because we had this radio operator and EWO console in the back of the airplane, we could only get one fuel bladder in there with 3,000 pounds of gas, or 3,000 gallons of gas. We tried using the Benson tanks, but still that wasn't enough. So we went over and got the EC-130s, and we could put 2 full fuel bladders in there to get enough gas to run the operation. And we needed 3 airplanes to do that, to get enough gas there for the helicopters. This is what it looked like in the back. These were the pumps and everything else. We had to have all the pumps and filters and all that other stuff, you know, so that we could pump from those bladders into the helicopters. And those were going to be hot refuelings there at Desert One. This is one of the crews. This is Jerry Utaro's crew. He was in Republic 06, the last airplane to go in there. But the reason we went over to get the ABCCC or the EC-130s was because the big thing was the air refuelable capability and the empty cargo compartment. And that's what we really needed. They were very lightweight when you pulled that big capsule out of there. And so we could put a lot of weight in there. Everybody know what the max gross weight emergency work planning is? 175,000. Normally it's 155,000. But if you really got to put a lot of weight on there, you can go up to 175,000. My loadmaster came up to me when we were loading everything up. We had all the gas on board, and he said, he told me, he says, "Hey, I just went over 190,000 and I quit counting." Okay, so we gathered the guys up and said, we went over and talked to the Lockheed guys, because we did have a Lockheed team there from Ontario. And they kind of said, well, you should be all right, because Southern Air, you know, they fly their airplanes sometimes up to close to 200,000. So it's okay. So that was one of the issues that we were concerned about, was the heavy weight taken off from Masera. But the 2 fuel bladders in the cargo compartment were the big thing. Communications, almost everything we were doing was calm out. We didn't talk to the tower when we left Masera. And we didn't talk to anybody when we deployed. We had trusted agents in the towers and at the ATC centers and things like that who were running interference for us, and told them, you know, hey, these guys are going to be coming through, and we were basically due regard on the way over. So we didn't talk to anybody. We kind of flew the fence if we were between 2 countries, and that's how we got there. We didn't talk to anybody from the time we left Hurlburt Field until we got to Sigonella, where we refueled. We talked to the approach and those guys there. We had some kind of plan that we were using, a cover plan. We took off from there, but we didn't talk to anybody until we turned and went down into Egypt, and we talked to ATC in Egypt until we got down to Wadi Kina, which is where we first initially deployed to. Secure comms, like I say, not all of our airplanes had secure comms, but we did have enough that some of the guys could talk to each other with that. Limited SATCOM. We did not have a SATCOM radio on the airplane at the time. The Special Forces guys had SATCOM, and this is kind of what their setup was. This was their antenna. So they said, well, let's try this. So they brought this antenna and they handed it to the co-pilot. And he said, you just hold that up, and he pointed out the window, and we'll see how this works. So as he was walking off the flight deck, he turned around and says, oh, by the way, don't touch any metal with that antenna, you know, while you're broadcasting. And Jerry Utaro was sitting in the right seat. He says, why not? He says, because it'll fry your ass. So, oh, okay. So that was initially how we started with the SATCOM. We later then were able to put these antennas in the overhead escape hatches, and they worked fairly well. So now you see a lot of airplanes with these little toadstools on top, or mushrooms, we call them, and those are the SATCOM antennas that we use. Current intel. One of the big problems was we did not have any real good intel from Tehran and what was going on there, or what was where were all the hostages. This was the embassy grounds, and I think we later found out there was a cook that was there. I think it was either a Filipino or Indian cook, just happened to be coming out of there on a commercial flight, and at some point in the route, he happened to be sitting right next to like a guy from the CIA or somebody like that, and they started talking, and he found out, hey, this is a cook from the embassy, and boy, did they scarf him off when he got off the plane here in the States, and we found out that most of the people were here in the Chancellor Building, I believe it was called, and then there were a few over in the ambassador's quarters. So okay, now we know where everybody is. So that helped a lot, and that helped the planning and what they were going to do when they went over the wall that night. lack of a cohesive force. What we mean there is that we were not working all the time with Marine pilots. We were not working all the time with the Special Forces guys that much. We weren't working at all with Delta as far as that goes. So we had to kind of pull all these different forces together and work out something so that we know what each other was going to be doing when we went and tried to do this mission. And that's why we wound up with JSOC and AFSOC and SOCOM and all those others that kind of now coordinates all that stuff together, and we work very well with all the different agencies. Deployment, like I said, the first SOS left Okinawa, and they went, I think they may have gone to Diego Garcia first and then on into Masira. We deployed from Hurlburt late in the evening under darkness, and it took us from that evening until the next night to get all the way to Wadi Kina in Egypt. Air refueling on the way to Sigonella, but we did go into Sigonella, we refueled there, got some last minute instructions, and then they told us how to get the procedures to get into Egypt and who to talk to and all that. And that's just very basic deployment as far as I go. But the helicopters, you know, they had sent those things out, the ones they were going to use on the mission, those had been out on the Nimitz for some time, and they really didn't exercise those helicopters because they didn't want anybody watching them see what they're doing. In fact, they even had the helicopters on the thing. There was one helicopter that had gotten sprayed with the fire retardant because somebody had set it off down in the bay of the ship, and they had to clean that thing up and get it going again. But very little exercise of those helicopters, and they think that may have been one of the problems that we had that caused some problems there. This is Wadi Kina. We call these places, this is where we stayed for a couple of nights. We kind of referred to them as the Wadi Kina condos, but they were not condos to any means. This is where we were. Sam was telling me a little story. They were out there the night we got there, but you can see our water supply was basically these blister bags there, hanging there. And inside, this is what it looked like. All cots and stuff. And we had to break down our cots. They said, break down your cots and take them with you down to Masira because you're going to need them when you get there. So when we got to Masira, and this is Masira, at the time, they did not have this cross runway. All it was basic graded dirt. They were getting ready to put it in, but it was all dirt. They didn't have this taxiway. So you can kind of see a real faint, did you see the runway, the active runway that was there? And you can kind of see this, it's like a double hammerhead here. And I'll give you a little better picture of that here in a minute. But we were parked in this, this area right here. We came in there. I was the first plane to go down from Wadi Kina, and they said, don't talk to anybody, just go in and land. Well, when we got there, they said, tell the next guys at least call the tower to get clearance to land. So we did that. And another little story, a little bit humorous. There's a fence that was right along here, and when we got there, the first SOS had it all turned out. They were all lined up down there, and they smartly saluted and turned around and dropped trout. So that was our arrival at Masira. This is how we were parked, and you see there's 6 airplanes and 2 spares. Now, we didn't screw up here when we got the numbers. This is Dragon were the Talons, Republic were the DC-130s, or we call them dumb birds. We refer to ourselves as dumb birds because we had no sophisticated navigation equipment or avionics or anything like that. But when they finally parked us, Hal Lewis and I were out of order. And that presented a little bit of a problem when we got ready to run the mission that night. And I'll talk about that just a little bit here in a minute. This is a picture of the airplanes all lined up there. The 2 spares here on this end. The 2 spares they used, it was a cover story. We were there to fly sea surveillance missions and practice nav over waters and things like that. So that was kind of our cover story as far as being there at Masira. These are our living quarters. Masira condos, we referred to them as, in the Masira camp, and it was a little austere, to say the least. Gathered around the campfire for dinner, Either loadmasters or I think were set up Scroungers Lounge, as they call their little area. And this was some of the things that would go on for, and we were only there for like a couple, 3 days. So, oh, sorry, the guy, they're taking a shower. This was our latrine facility. In fact, I can't remember what was in that, but they said, hey, let's go throw that box away, we can use that. So that's what they did. This was the day of the mission, and the guys were out there practicing, dragging out the hoses, getting ready, starting the pumps to pump the fuel and stuff like that. So they practiced that the very last day, just before we went off on the mission. I think this is early in the morning. So early in the morning, everybody was up, and we were doing things, finalizing the mission planning. And I think a few of us laid down and got a little bit of a nap in the afternoon, but that was about the only rest we had there for about 2 days. This is one of the guys to get a little nap before things took off. It was like a big water bed in the back of the airplane. You could walk around on it, and it was real squishy, so hide the airplanes. We still had, the U.S. insignia and stuff like that on all the airplanes, so we took cans of paint and we covered everything. There was nothing shiny or bright on the airplane at all, including the props. We painted the props black so that we were pretty well hidden. We did have some IR lights up on the tail and on top of the airplane that other airplanes that had MVGs on could see, but that was the only lights we had when we ran this operation. In fact, when we were on the route in there, we could see the helicopters down below us. They were coming along, and we were headed kind of in a different direction. But we did see the helicopters because they had IR tip lights on their rotors. So night one, these are the NVGs we were using at the time. The old PVS-5s, the first NVGs that we basically started using. And just a little bit on background on the NVGs, we sent somebody came over to Okinawa and said, hey, try these out, see what you think. Well, a guy named Marty Jubelt put them on, and he tried to fly a couple of approaches into Kadena, but they had all the runway lights and everything on, and he couldn't really see anything when he got close because it washed out those NVGs. They were not real good, but and he came back and said, these are worthless. And and that was probably about half a year or so before they took the hostages. Well, after that, they gave them back to us and said, here, learn to use these. So we started working with NVGs, and we had to develop all the procedures that we use, and there's still, a lot of those procedures are still used today. The co-pilot flies the approach, the pilot takes over and makes the landing. And that's what we finally came up with, and like I said, they're still using some of those procedures today. It's nice with the J model because you've got the head and everything, so that's really, really nice. But that's what it was. The pilot and the engineer, or pilots and the two engineers, or the engineer, wore the MEGs. Sometimes the flight engineer just had his hanging around his neck so that he could bring them up, because it was too hard to adjust one eye inside and one eye outside. That would give you a tremendous headache. So a lot of times the flight engineer, he just had his hanging around his neck. But the co-pilot would fly the approach, adjusted so he could see the instruments inside. The pilot was looking outside, and when he found the runway, he took over and made the landing. Okay, again, this is the way we were basically parked. And Sam, if you want to throw in here any time on if something I leave out that you think might be important. In fact, this is Sam's crew.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that.
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, we on April the 24th. Let me go back just a minute. I want to go back to Watakina. You were talking about a story we had. We landed at Watakina, which is the first FOB, about midnight. And we cut some cans open, and 3 of us got into that bottle pretty heavy, and a bunch of the flight engineers and loadmasters were playing cards. Had a board on top of a 55-gallon drum. Russ's loadmaster walked over and hit the board and tipped all their money, and cards were flying everywhere, and they almost got in a fight for that, you know. So we were still sitting there about 7 in the morning. Finally decided we need to go inside and go to bed. We expected a little bit of crew rest. About 45 minutes later, Colonel Brinksey is shaking me, waking me up, and said, we got to get over flight plan. I could not get I had 2 navigators. We couldn't get the other navigator awake. He was gone. He was out of it. So go over there in those shorts and t-shirt, hot and sweaty, and do flight planning. We didn't have computer flight planning. We had, you know, the protractors and dividers, and lay it down and measure it all out with a whiz wheel, you know, and had to stand there and do this all day long. This was to get from Wadi Qidna around Saudi Arabia over to Masira. So we had a pretty long day. I think the other nav finally showed up about noon after a little bit of rest. But when we got over there, like Russ said, we got over there on the 20th. I'm sorry, the 23rd. 22nd is when we arrived at Masira. And stayed there that night. And the next day, we pretty much were around there trying to get everything organized, get a tent city set up and everything. On the morning of the 24th, they came out and said, it looks like the mission is a go. So you guys need to start the mission planning. Well, up until that point, I was telling Russ about this, I knew, you know, we knew where we were going, we knew what the objective was, but we didn't have any other details as far as the crew. Talk about compartmentalization. They said, here's your target today. This is at the crew dog level. Start planning it. So the NAVs are in there, we're drawing the lines and doing all this mission planning and everything. Of course, we had intel briefings, weather briefings, what ifs, going through the whole plan, basically the whole day of briefings and planning. And they said we're probably going to go tonight. So we were up all day mission planning. And then about 5 o'clock, they said, we want to get a picture of the crews of the airplanes. And that's when we went out. Nobody told our crew they were supposed to be in flight suits. and to be on the other side of the airplane, you know, looking into the sun rather than the sun behind that airplane. So you're going to see from the other pictures, their pictures came out great. This is not so great here. Pretty ragtag looking bunch. I told a mouse on the flag. Our loadmasters actually came up with that. Colonel Brincy is in the door here. Colonel Guidry, our squadron commander, is right there. He was on our plane. And in addition to those guys, we carried Delta and Rangers and all their equipment and some combat controllers.
In addition to Colonel Kyle, Colonel Beckwith,
yeah,
Colonel Whitsitt, there were just a whole lot of strap hangers up on the flight deck on the mission going in there.
There was Kyle, who was the on-scene commander, Colonel Wicker, our DO, Colonel Guidry, squadron commander, and John Carney, who was a major at the time, who was the combat control guy, all standing up, strap hangers on the flight deck. I remember when I went back to do my pre-flight, we had some equipment in the back there. You know, the EWO and RO sat in the back at a console. And some of my nav equipment was right behind them in the equipment rack. I had to do a pre-flight check. And I went back there, and there were Delta sitting all over the floor, and I went back to kind of stepping over them, and Colonel Beckwith, Charlie Beckwith, came up and said, what the hell are you doing back here? And I said, Jackie Russ, he said, get the hell back up there. I never checked my stuff. The guy was intimidating. I'm telling you this. I thought he was going to throw me back off the plane. You know, I was trying to tell him I was a navigator, and he didn't care. You couldn't tell Beckwith anything, you know. So that was kind of set up for our takeoff. We were the lead crew. So we were going to take off first and fly up there and do the security, perimeter security for the other landing operations, get those lights set up and everything. We took off about 1805 and headed north. Like Russ said, we were well over 190,000 pounds as well. Our terrain following system was only good to 165,000. You had detents you could set for weight. It wasn't automatically adjusted. So they set it at the highest one and hope for the best. And you know, we knew that the ranges and mountains were coming up. We knew how far we out, so we kind of jury-rigged it a little bit, started climbing a little bit early. You know, we didn't want to climb too early because there were ships and everything out in the sea out there. But really no factor going into the country. There was, and thank goodness the intel was, I'd say, more conservative than it should have been, because we didn't have any problems at all. Our EWO on our plane said, you guys can go higher. You don't need to be hugging the ground like this. You can get higher and higher. And we entered 5,000 feet above the ground. I wish we could have communicated that to the helicopters, and we tried to do that. Colonel Kyle tried to call after we saw the radar pictures started getting really blurry, fuzzy. And we couldn't figure out what it was, and finally determined it was the haboob, you know, the dust storm. And Kyle goes, God, the helicopters are down in that. They were coming off the Nimitz. He said, they're hugging the ground in that. We were well above it. He said, man, it'd be nice. And so they actually tried to contact he told Wicker to go in the back and get the radio operator to try to contact the helicopters. Now Wicker came back and said they had tried, but they couldn't. So the helicopters ended up in that dust. And we'll see later, when Russ will talk about it more, this added to the fact that we didn't have enough helicopters to complete the mission there.
Yeah. Another one of the things, I kept asking the question, where are their SIGINT facilities? Are they going to be able to see us, when we're flying up through Iran? And not until that day did I get I found a Marine intel guy, and he says, you don't have to worry about that. They're all up in the north looking at Russia. So that was kind of a little warm, fuzzy feeling. And the radar sites down on the coast that we were going into, we knew where those were, and we kind of knew their schedules and things like that. So we split the difference on a couple of the radars down there, and we don't think they ever picked us up. And of course, we crossed the coast at about 200-300 feet, so that helped too.
Let me go ahead and talk a little bit about, let's get down there before we get into that fiasco in this area here.
Oh, okay. This side over here was the order that we were supposed to be in. Sam was supposed to be on Dragon 1, and they left an hour ahead of the rest of us. Then Marty G-Belt was supposed to be in the second Talon, and he was supposed to have Hal Lewis on his wing in the Dunbird. I'll refer to them as Dunbirds. And then Steve Fleming was in the third Talon, and he was supposed to lead Jerry Utaro and I in on his wing. And this is not your standard AMC 2,000 foot in trail. We were in fingertip the whole way in there. The problem was, and I'll talk about the reason it wound up like this, with again Britsy going in an hour ahead of each other, or an hour ahead of the rest of us. But Jubelt wound up going in kind of by himself, and then Fleming had the three of us on his wing in a four-ship.
See, we didn't realize all this was going on. We had taken off an hour prior. Everything was going great as far as we were concerned. We got in, got over the Habu, did our FLIR pass. We had one of the FLIR birds that used the IR to determine whether or not the landing area was clear. There was a road running right through it. We did see a truck tooling down the road, so we went around, came back around, we're lined up right. Came back and came ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up a diagram here in a little bit. This is Marty Jubelt's crew, the second airplane that was in there, the second Talon. And this was kind of the way we were supposed to take off. We all taxied out kind of at the same time. And you see here that I'm in front of Hal Lewis from the way we taxied out. We thought we could get by each other down here on the runway. In fact, they'd gone out, and Hal Lewis says, yeah, we can get by there. So I just pulled out here, pulled over as far as I could, but he still couldn't get past me. So he says, okay, go down and get in the hammerhead and pull up behind Fleming, and I'll go behind you and get in the proper order. Well, when we got down there, I had my nose up under his tail, and he still could not get behind me and get past there. So what happened was Jubelt went ahead and took off. And then Fleming pulled out, and he took off, and then I was able to get up far enough that Hal Lewis was pulled around and got in position for takeoff. Well, Jerry Utaro's sitting down here, and he's supposed to count 2 airplanes, 1, 2, and then he was supposed to taxi out and come down and get in line and take off with the rest of us. Well, when he saw 2 airplanes go by, he pulls out on the runway. Well, at that time, Hal Lewis can now get behind me, so he pulls around here real quick, and he starts his takeoff roll. That wasn't too good, because when they finally saw each other, coming at each other, 2 airplanes weighing more than 190,000 pounds, Utaro runs off the runway, and he comes bouncing around out here and walks and sticks and everything, as Hal Lewis goes smoking by in full brakes and full reverse, trying to get stopped. And Jerry pulls back on the runway and comes here, and then he pulls around and sits here and catches his breath. In the meantime, Hal Lewis is screeching to a halt down here, so he pulls in and actually was able to turn around, and he sat there. We asked Jerry if he was okay, and he said, yeah, I'm good. That was the only radio transmission that was made, and so I think he took off at that point. So then I take off, and then Hal comes down, and he packs up and he takes off. So now we're all out of position, and my nav, Kenny Poole, saying, what are we going to do? And, you know, I heard a couple of bits of static. Somebody was broadcasting something, but because my secure radios weren't working, I don't know what was said. So I told him, well, fire up the radar, and we'll just have to look for Fleming out there and hope that we can catch him before we hit the coast. And that's what we did. In the meantime, Utaro has taken off, and he's going out, and he sees something out there on his radar. And he's like, okay, there's Fleming out there, and he starts slowing down. But they were coming too fast. In other words, they were too slow. And what he found out was there was a couple of ships in the water, and so he did one of these numbers going around the ship, thinking that he was going to have to catch him up again or something. In the meantime, we went smoking by and never saw him. So I finally caught Fleming just before we got into the coast, and then Hal Lewis somehow got past Utaro also, and he comes up on Fleming's left wing, and we pulled up far enough that he could see us and to let him know we were there. And then we kept waiting for Utaro to come in, and he finally caught up and got into the slot just before we crossed the coast. So that's how we round up in that order. So now this is my bunch. Kenny Poole was my nav, and we had each of the airplanes had 3 pilots on board. The pilot and co-pilot, and then we had a safety pilot which stood behind the pilot, and he was there to kind of keep an eye on things, the overall mission, and to let us know if he saw anything odd or whatever. So that was the reason we carried 3 pilots on all the airplanes. And then, of course, the flight engineer was there also to kind of help us. But we were, and then I had a second nav on board. John Logan was there to kind of help back up Ken Poole. Some of you may know Kenny Poole. He's been down at Herbert for a long time working there. This is Hal Lewis's crew. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but Hal Lewis, Lynn McIntosh, Joel Mayo, and Rick Bakke, and where's this? McMillan, yeah. Those are the guys we lost during this operation. The radio operator, J.J. Byers, was burned really bad, and I'll talk a little bit about some of his injuries and what happened when the airplanes ran together. This is who's this one? This one is Jerry Utaro in the last airplane. That's his crew. Okay, the deal was, and again, we joined up just before we hit the coast of Tehran, and proceeded in here, still in fingertip formation. And I think it was about in this area right here that we passed over the helicopters. And we could see them down there with their little IR tip lights on their rotors. Hey, there they are. So, hey, everything's good, you know. But it was, I think I have another slide here. This is Desert One. This was, and I don't know when this picture was taken, but I think we landed in this direction. And I'll talk a little bit about, well, how did you know where to go, or where to land? Well, there were a set of lights down here, 4 lights that John Carney had gone in there. He had flown in there in a Twin Otter about 2 weeks before and had surveyed the area, made sure that we were good and everything. And then he put, what we call the box in one, with 4 lights down on the approach into the runway and the landing area, and then a single light at the end of what we consider the landing area. And that's how Brincy and Sam got in there.
As far as those lights go, Major Carney was up in the window when we came in. We did the FLIR pass, saw the truck, went around, came back around. Carney had hit the switch to turn on the lights. Some of the lights came on, most of them, but not all of them came on. And we'll talk about that later. I think this led to something else later too. But we came in, and there was a gully up about a mile north of the approach, and I was working the radar to do the updates. we were kind of concerned because that's all there was to update off of. And like he said, our nav system was terrible. We didn't even have to write it up until it got to more than 2.5 miles an hour off. So we had to continually update off of radar and IDS, overfly updates and things like that. We had a gully that we were going to use. The gully could have been as much as a mile off based on the chart. We used a TPC chart, which only has an accuracy good to a mile. So we were praying that this gully was right, the corner of a gully. We came down, and we ended up not quite lined up right. We came back around another time, still had the FLIR. Remember he told you the FLIR is right behind the nose gear door. Well, a part of the before landing checklist was to retract the FLIR. Well, as I was looking at this truck going down the thing, talking to Colonel Kyle and Colonel Wicker, I missed that call on the checklist, so I didn't bring the FLIR up. It's a perfect storm here, and then of course we get a FLIR warning. Now it started to come up, started to retract, and it did not interfere with the nose gear door. It did come down, but that warning, that beep, beep, beep was on in addition to everything else, not being able to tell exactly where we were, was this beeping in our ears all the way down, and not hearing the calls. We finally came back around, got lined up, and I remember Colonel Brincy, who was at the controls, going, "I don't have it." And then somebody said, "You're too slow," and bam, we hit the ground. And we surprised everybody, including the pilots, that we were on the ground. Said, "God, I hope we're in the right place." Because, the Ewell thought we crashed. I remember just, like in my seat like this, came back up, and we bounced and we rolled out. And lo and behold, we were at the right place. We were on the right side of the road there, and taxied down, turned around, and everything seemed to be okay. We sat there and just waited. Well, there's a bus that came tooling down the road. All the combat control guys and rangers got out to secure the area, and this bus comes tooling down the road, right in the middle of our operation there.
There's a FLIR picture that.
Yeah, there's the FLIR and the nose gear right there. Anyway, this bus comes tooling down the road, and somebody said, "God, there's a bus coming down the road." So they fired a shot or two across the nose of a grenade launcher across the nose of the bus to get it to stop. Had 40-something people on it. And they said, "What are we going to do with all these people?" And they said, "Well, Rick said, we're going to put them on your plane. We'll just fly them out with us, So I can imagine in the middle of the desert in the night, these abduction stories, where So they put all these people on our plane, and I remember walking down and looking back in the cargo compartment, and these are scared bunch of people, older people, kids, and wonder what's going on. And then one of the Delta guys came up, and Brincy said, "You got to get these people off our plane, because one of the Delta guys has lost his firearm in the back, his personal revolver, nickel-plated revolver that he had lost." He said, "There's a firearm in all these hospitals," so took them off and put them back on the bus. Honestly, after that, I didn't know what happened to the people on the bus.
When I got there, they said, "We're going to put 40 Iranians on your airplane. You're going to take them back to Nasir with you." What? That pistol actually belonged to an Iranian general that was on board with us. He was one of our trusted agents, I guess. That's kind of a little bit more to the story. But you want to go ahead with the track?
All right, so we get the bus incident resolved, right? And then there's a fuel truck that comes down the road toward us, and we're followed by a pickup. And I remember Kyle going, "God, is this like Hollywood or what?" It's right in the middle of the desert, middle of the night. This truck. So they fired a shot to get it to stop. It didn't stop. And finally, one of the guys just hit it and blew it up. He meant to hit the engine, but he hit the fuel. Blew the truck up. The driver jumped out, ran and got the pickup, and they took off. There was kind of worrisome at that point, the secret operation and everything. They said, well, they figured it might be a fuel smuggling operation, so they probably wouldn't go to the police. But so we got this burning truck sitting down here. That's kind of, I guess, when I realized that it was a real mission.
This ain't no exercise.
At this point, we've been rehearsing so much that everything kind of ran into another. It was just like another rehearsal, as far as we were concerned. And I went out to the back. I had to go take a leak out the back of the plane, and I didn't realize it, because we thought, we'd taxi with no problem. But I sank up to over my boots in the sand, and plane is sitting there, but I guess the footprint kept it from going down. But it was about then I saw this truck burn. I said, wait a minute, this is not an exercise. I got back on the plane.
Get back on the plane, Sam.
I got to tell you, there's parts of this are kind of hazy for me because I had an abscessed tooth, and we had all had the hard crews. We'd all flown together, knew the calls, and knew each other's our voices. So in a hard crew, that was important because the pilot needed to know the voicings here. So when somebody said 125, he needed to know that was altitude and not airspeed. I mean, that was the way we worked. He had MVGs on. He couldn't see his instruments. So 125, 110, so we had a hard cruise, and we couldn't switch out at the last minute. So I had this abscessed tooth, and over at Masera, Doc Polson's our combat doc, we called him, from our flight surgeon from Forward, said he couldn't do anything about getting the tooth out. He could give me all kind of painkillers. A lot of codeine. And I was about 5,000 feet higher than the airplane, actually. I wasn't worried about getting updates. I wasn't worried about a whole lot until the other navs said, get an update, Sam. So that's what I'm saying. It was like another exercise to me until it just hit me. When those people got in the back of the plane, Colonel Bridgie said, you guys better, load your pistols.
Just in case.
For that one bullet, And we had our, survival vest on, had the bullets in the pocket, and I remember putting this thing up. All my bullets were flying on the floor. I was crawling around under the desk trying to find them because all I could think about was the paperwork for losing bullets, So, but comedy of errors there. But that truck burning caused some other problems for people coming in. I'll get back to Russ and talk to you about what that caused.
Yeah, and remember the Brincey's there an hour ahead of the rest of us. So then what happened was Jubel, came in and he landed on the other runway. Well, the combat controllers there, they put out these other lights on the other side of the road. So now we've got this dual runway that we've got there. And Jubel came in and landed, I guess with no problem. But and then we came in again. And Fleming was, of course, leading the rest of us. So Fleming lands on the right runway, and Hal Lewis lands at the same time on the left runway. It was dual runway operations that we talked about, and dual runway or dual landings, and they both went in and landed at the same time. In the meantime, Jerry and I go around. I split off to the right, Jerry splits off to the left, and we come back around, and I'm supposed to come in right ahead of Jerry and land on the other runway, and Utaro's supposed to come in and land on the left runway. I didn't have any problem finding my lights and everything because they kind of adjusted them. They were a little bit out of whack and got them all working. So I've got 4 lights there, and it's just like a gun sight. You just come in and land on it. But I noticed when I came in and landed, right as I was coming over the lights, these 2 big deep ruts in the sand there. And I thought, my God, I thought they said this was as hard as a rock out here. Well, it was until Brincey landed there, and he hit so hard. He put those impressions in the sand there, pretty good ruts. Because when I landed, I rolled out like I was on concrete, and went down, stopped just short of the one light down there. However, when Jerry came in, because of the smoke coming off the truck, he couldn't see the lights down here, so he had to go around again. And I think he went around one more time before he was able to finally get in and find the lights and landed. So he pulls up, and this was our configuration. In the meantime, Brincey has already left, and Jubel has left to go back to Masera. So they saw us coming in, and we're all there, and they said, "Oh, great, man, everything's working just fine."
They were coming in, all around the ground, or getting ready to land, and helicopters we heard were en route. We took off and headed back. Everything was great. We thought it was going great. Didn't know any better until we landed back down in Masera, that all this had happened up there.
So here we sat waiting for the helicopters, and they showed up, I think, about an hour late. Because I thought I had, they took off from the Nimitz, took off with 8 helicopters. However, en route, they were coming up here. One helicopter had some avionics problems. Either he didn't know what it was, but he says, I don't think I can get there with what's going on. So he turned around and went back, thinking, okay, they got 7 more. They've got plenty of helicopters there. However, when the other 7 got into these dust storms here, they actually landed and stopped there. And one of the helicopters had BIM light. BIM light is an integration problem with the rotor blades, and he thought the rotor blades were about ready to come apart. I've talked to 53 drivers since then. They said, you really didn't need to worry about it initially. You just didn't want to fly too long with it. But he abandoned a helicopter there, and the rest of the guys got on the other helicopter, and they continued on. Well, they got in the second dust storm, and they were I don't know how these guys made it, because they were down. They wanted to see the ground the whole time to make sure they didn't hit something. Well, they had this mountain range they had to cross. So again, I don't know how they really did it, but apparently they came out of the dust storm and were able to see the mountains and get over them. But when they landed, so we wound up with only 6 airplanes back at Desert One. 3 had gone over behind Hal Lewis because they thought, there were more helicopters coming in. There were supposed to be 3 behind each airplane there. So this is the configuration we have. And when this guy pulled up behind me, he shut down. And I asked him, I said, why is he shutting down? Well, he went over and tried to find out, and one of his hydraulic pumps was glowing red. It was about ready to come apart. And he said, they've got hydraulic problems, and I don't know if they'll be able to get it fixed or not. Well, they said, we cannot go on with that. So now we've only got 5 helicopters. We needed 6 to continue on to be able to take everybody to the Hyde site and continue with the mission. And Beckwith was just adamant about he had to have everybody that he had. So they talked about it and argued about it. They had a little command post, I think, set up kind of in this area here, kind of watching everything and talking to everybody. So they finally decided, well, we're just going to have to go home then and abort this whole operation. They called the president. They were talking to the White House. They called the president and said, we're going to have to abort. Maybe we'll come back in tomorrow night. Okay, get the hell out of there. So there were just a couple other radio transmissions that were made. Hal Lewis, I remember him saying, hey, I've got to leave right now just to get back to the tanker so that I can get back to Masira. And what the plan was, we were going to give up all of our gas to all the helicopters, and then we were going to go out and hit tankers that were coming out of Diego Garcia just to get us back to Masira. He says, I've got to leave right now. And they said, okay, wait till we move this helicopter so that you'll have room to turn around here and take off and get out of here. And when they were moving this helicopter, he thought that he had turned after he got off the ground because he was so heavy he couldn't hover. So he had to basically get into transition lift and get going. So he thought he was turning and going out this way when he went right up over the talon and exploded right there. I was watching from over here, and as he was lifting off, there were they'd taken off the sand screens on the front of the engine, so it was ingesting all this sand, and it was spitting hot marbles out the exhaust, and that's what it looked like. It looked like heated marbles coming out the exhaust as he was lifting off, and then he exploded. Well, at that point, things got a little bit hectic, and after a while, they were able to get everybody except 5 guys up on the flight deck out of the 130, and we lost 3 of the guys that were in the back of the helicopter. The 2 pilots got out, and they kind of stumbled around and were trying to come over this way, and Jerry Utar was afraid they were going to walk through the props to try to get to the back of the airplane to get in. So he sent his loadmaster out there to get those guys, and one of them was burned pretty good. And J.J. Byers, again, he was standing at the crew entrance door with his, I think with his elbows up on the flight deck, and he was just standing there when the airplane exploded, and I think it knocked a hole in that side of the airplane, and all the flames came in and burned him pretty bad. In fact, his fingers were all fused together. He burned his backside pretty good, and he was in pretty bad shape. Well, he was there by the crew entrance door and in the front of the cargo compartment, and somebody heard him yelling and screaming, And one of the, I think one of the Delta guys went back and grabbed him and pulled him out the back. They initially opened up the left side, they were opening both of the parachute doors, but there was nothing but flames out the left side, so everybody in the back of the airplane came out the right side of the airplane, and they were just jumping out. Some of them were falling over each other, and they all ran over and got in our airplanes. They put the most injured in Utaro's airplane because that's the plane that the combat doc was in, Doc Postals, and they had luckily brought IVs and things like that just in case. And so they started IVs on one of the, I think on one of the helicopter pilots and on J.J. Byers. So they told me to turn around and get ready to take off finally. In the meantime, Jerry Utaro had pulled up here, and he had turned around and he was sitting here. They told me to turn around there and get ready to take off. This was kind of what it looked like at the time. So I turned around and Jerry was turned around, and when they finally told me to take off, what I had done was I turned around, and because of the MEGs, I couldn't really see my instruments or what my heading was or anything like that. So I just turned around and was looking for these lights down here, knowing that I could just take off that direction. Problem was, they pulled up those lights and they dropped some chem lights down there, which I couldn't see, and what I was looking at were the lights over here across the road. So when they told me to go, and there was a berm about this high on each side of that road. By the time I got to about 60 or 70 knots, I could see that berm. So all I could think about doing was, this was, just kind of a natural reaction. I pulled the nose back, and my nose did come up enough that we hit that berm and launched. So I basically launched myself across the road and put down over here again, kept headed this way. When I put the nose down, it was still accelerating, so I thought, well, we'll get some fine speed here in a minute. And so I took off somewhere down in this area because there was a wash area down here I remember seeing, but we took off just before that. I probably got to about 200 feet, and this light comes on down by my knee. So I looked down, and all I could see was a fuzzy gauge that was going like this. It was the engine oil was going down. So I told the co-pilot to shut that one down, and so that's how we came home on 3 engines. In the meantime, I think Fleming was the next to take off, and of course he did the same thing I did. He launched himself across the road and basically did about the same thing, but he didn't blow any seals on any of his engines. And then when Utaro took off, he said he hit the berm right down here someplace, just as he was lifting off. So everybody that you talk about, or every Delta guy that I talked to coming out of there said, oh yeah, I was on your airplane because I remember we hit something. Well, we all hit something, So I really don't know who was on my airplane, but we never figured it out. But we did take off, and I just continued to climb. I mean, I didn't have very, very good performance, but I continued to climb because I knew those guys coming behind me were going to catch me and probably pass me. So I kept climbing. I think we climbed up to almost 10,000 feet to make sure we get across the mountains, because now the moon has gone down, and all I could see out front was just gray-black, what do they call it, ciliation or something with the MEGs. And that's all I could see. So I couldn't see the ground, I couldn't see anything, except a few lights once in a while. I don't remember coming through any dust coming out of there, probably because I couldn't see it. But when we were going in, I noticed being on the wing of the other airplane, he was getting kind of fuzzy and it was getting real hazy. It was kind of a brown haze, and we didn't really realize until after we got into those 2 dust storms what it really was, actually when we got back to Masira. Because we weren't looking at anything but the guy right next to us. So that's kind of how we got out of there. This was a picture that was taken, I guess, the next day. You can see there the airplane and the helicopter sitting right there by the cockpit. Now, how this airplane and this helicopter burned up, we're not sure, because when the airplane was burning, there were things going off. I don't know if it was the tires exploding or ordnance in the back of the airplane that the Delta guys had brought with them. But it was rocking my airplane clear across where I was. So we think that either some of the pyrotechnics, wound up in this airplane and this one and caught them on fire. We also heard a rumor or something to the fact that when the Iranians went out there the next day, they saw the rotors turning on the helicopters because they hadn't set the brake or whatever they do with it, and they thought that they were starting up and were going to try to leave. So they strafed it with some airplanes. I don't know if they were using F4s at the time or what. Some of our F4s that we'd given them, and they may have shot those airplanes up. I don't know. But that's pictures. I think this was a picture that was in Time magazine of the crash site. So we get back to Masira, and in the meantime, we're trying to count who's in the back of the airplane and how many people we've got, and how many have wound up there. But not until we got back did we really figure out that we were missing eight guys. And unfortunately, there was no way that we could have sat there and waited to try to get them out of that airplane with it burning the way it was. So we kind of had to leave them. Another picture of the airplanes. Okay, a few weeks after that, when all was kind of said and done, I got to go up to the Pentagon with Steve Fleming, who's here with me, and we were doing the after-action report, trying to write up everything, trying to remember everything that happened and what went on. And we were down in General Gast's office doing this. We were sitting right there in his office writing up this stuff, and he kept coming and going, and we would jump up every time he would come in or go out. And he said, no, you guys just continue on. I'm going to be coming and going. But anyway, they came down and said, okay, you got to be up at a certain room at a certain time this morning because we just need you up there. There's something that's going to go on up there. So we went up there and waited, and they came in and said, okay, we're going to go across the hall here in a little bit, and y'all know why we're here, right? Well, no, nobody knew, except a couple of guys. And the president was going to come over and talk to us, which was kind of nice. But we went across the room, went in, and waited for the president to get there. In the meantime, General Vaught gets up and he starts telling a joke. And he's about halfway through his joke that he's talking about, and the door kind of opens up, and they say, okay, the president's here. He said, okay, just a minute, I'll be finished. And so he had to finish telling his joke. But that's just, the General Vaught was that way. But he came in and talked to us for about 30 minutes or so, and then we went back to work. I'll let Sam get into some of the stuff that the follow-up of what happened and what that was a result of.
You pretty much you can see the bullets on the slide here. I'm not going to get too much in detail for it, but basically, the Holloway Commission, Admiral Holloway led this commission, about 6 general officers, flag officers were part of this. They did a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing in May of 1980. And also the House Armed Services Committee. Holloway Commission went through all the documentation and came up with these findings right here. And I'll let you read those. Basically, we're looking at these little dirty wars now, instead of the big wars. And they said we need to have the capability to do that. Small clandestine op concepts. It was a high-risk op because of the location, like you said, the mission factors, the location, the timing. First, realistic capability, we didn't reach it until March of 80, and one of the findings that surprised me is the rehearsals. They said we didn't do enough rehearsals with all the players. I'm sure Russell will agree, we did a lot of rehearsals. But we had some partials. And also, we didn't mention that this set of Marine pilots that flew this mission, that was the 3rd set of Marine pilots in these helicopters. We had issues with those Marine pilots in the rehearsal. Nothing against the Marines or anything, but they weren't trained to do this mission.
I guess the best way to describe it is they didn't have the mindset for this type of operation. And we only got with the Marine guys one time, and that was when we had an exercise out at, we actually went out to Edwards, where we had the closest rehearsal to what we actually did was we took 2 airplanes out there. Bob Meller was the pilot on the Talon. I flew on his wing. He went in and landed. I went around. Again, this was over on the southwest side, way off the base at Edwards on the dry lake bed. I went around and came back in and landed, and the helicopters came in, pulled up behind us. We did a hot refueling, and then that was the only time where we did what I consider to be a sort of a full rehearsal, but it wasn't with everybody. So that's kind of what that was.
That was a biggie. Needed the need for joint training, just to get that mindset going. OPSEC, of course, and along with that was the COMSEC. The planning was adequate, except as far as the dust storm, the predictability of the dust storms and things like that, and the number of backup helicopters determined was enough. Unexpected helo failure rate and low visibility flight conditions, as you see from the briefing, and contributed directly to the problems. DZ location next to the road with the bus and the truck that came through, you can tell. Major issues because there was no existing joint task force, and you know where that went. From USSOCOM, JSOC, excessive OPSEC outside the ad hoc task force. It was very, very compartmentalized. It was so compartmentalized, in fact, I think it was too much at that point. There wasn't enough communication between people. So the recommendations, permanent joint task force and a special ops advisory panel. Came out of that, there was a modernization initiative between 1987 and 1990. They got the updated MVGs, for example, HC-138 sensor upgrades. That was, the HC-138 was just coming online. Now that's a thing of the past. So our slides are a little bit outdated, but this is what happened at that time. Defensive systems upgrades, using paid-below MH-53 paid-below helicopters, and hopefully some Air Force pilots. Okay, so in May of 1986, 6 years later, Senator Cohen and Nunn, Representative Daniels, put in a bill to reorganize SOF. And it passed in October of 1986. USSOCOM was formed in 1987, April of 1987, and they created the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Ops Low Intensity Conflict. I ended up being involved in this a little bit. In October of '87, I got assigned to USSOCOM in J3. I understand it's back to the J's now instead of the other stuff. But our office was training and exercises, joint training, and we tried to work things with the gunships and with AFSOC. AFSOC stood up General Patterson. We worked joint training issues. We worked a lot with ASD Solic on training locations. In fact, that's why we ended up in Kirtland out here from the ASD Solic study back in about 1988. We started that, and because of the weather, the budget impacts, and all that kind of stuff, we started looking at the little birds, to solve the helicopter problem. Loris, you can probably talk a little bit more about this one than I can.
These are some of the results of all that event. Little birds, of course, they're C-130 transportable, they have removable blades, a lot of good things with Little Bird, and they've been using them a lot since. In fact, the follow-on training that we did, we worked with the Little Birds a lot. Sam could talk about this a little bit. Credible Sport, they started working with a C-130, and they completely modified that thing with all kinds of rockets and retro rockets and all kinds of things. And they were planning to go back into Tehran, and they were going to land a C-130 in the soccer field across the road, and then turn around and take off.
Yeah, Utaro, who he's talked about, was in number 6, was the AC on the crew. We got tapped to go up to Lockheed and help develop this thing, and I was one of the NAVs. It was a very, very quick program. They always say the program's not complete until the paperwork, the way to the paperwork equals the aircraft weight. There was no paperwork involved in this. They said, "We got the job, we got a month to do it, get this plane modified." Put the rockets on it. These rockets were so powerful here, the takeoff rockets, the takeoff roll was 160 feet for that 130. So 160 feet, not even twice length airplane. It had a sharp pitch, had 2 rockets on the back that fired automatically to get the angle of attack over, level it out, and then 2 more under the wings to provide additional thrust. And if it felt like it was a yaw, the opposite one would straighten it out. That was just the takeoff. The landing had retro rockets, that fired forward and down. They were so strong that in the cargo compartment there was a steel rod about this big around that went across right behind the main gear to keep the cargo part from being crushed when the rockets fired. You know, pretty powerful rockets. We did the partials on it. Unfortunately, we had a kind of a mishap at Field 1 on the day that Utah and our crew were supposed to fly the full-up mission. We'd flown partial firings, but never the full thing. The crew fired the retros too high, about 10 feet high, and the plane dropped straight down, broke the wing off. And that was pretty much the end of the program.
Yeah, you can go on YouTube and you can pull up Credible Sport, and they got a video of that event. So,
by the way, that Credible Sport program the next year turned into the Talon 2 crew concept briefing, or crew concept testing for the Talon 2. You know, could you do with just one nav and an EWO, or two navs, and it became the system for that. And that's when General Schwartz, Nordy Schwartz, got involved in it with the Talon 2 program.
Yeah. In fact, Nordy had come to the 8th SOS just before the mission went on, or just right after or something. But he was a member of the 8th SOS. We used to kid Nordy about being the chief of staff someday. You know, he was a major at the time, and he would kind of laugh it off and say, yeah. But later it came true. Combat Talon was a direct result of that. CD-22 and some other airplanes, the J model, the Whiskey, and a lot of other modifications to some other 130 special ops. If you've not read The Guts to Try, it's probably the best summary and what happened, because when when he wrote his manuscript, he had his manuscript, he brought it down to Herbert, and he let several of us go through it, and we corrected a lot of the things that we thought weren't quite right or whatever, and we added some stuff, but the editor made him keep it to that size of book and those pages, so he left out a lot of the stuff like the fiasco there at Masira when we were departing and things like that. The name of the book, or the title of the book, came from this little phrase. After we got back to Masira, we're sitting around kind of licking our wounds, and this Land Rover comes around from the other side of the base. It was a Brit base, and this Land Rover comes around the thing with a trail of dust behind it. He pulls up right between our two tents, and two guys get out, and they set these 3 boxes on the ground, and they get back in the thing, and they take off, and just left. Well, what's that? Well, I don't know, let's go see. Well, I went up and I saw this first thing, because it was right on top. It was on the top box. To all of you guys from all of us for having the guts to try. So I pulled out my swallow knife and I cut those off. In fact, I cut off all the flaps on that box and kept it. And this was one of the historical things that came out of that whole operation. So, but The Guts to Try was Kyle's title to his book. There have been several books since then that have talked about it. Beckwith wrote a book, and a lot of other guys wrote books. The airplane that I flew, one of the few airplanes I became attached to, 1857, they were going to retire this airplane, and they had a special retirement ceremony that they did up at Fort Bragg, and they invited me up for that, and they were going to do a bunch of jumps with the new students in this airplane, but it was too cloudy, and they were able to do that. But we had a bunch of the Delta guys that were on the mission there. This is Logan Fitch and Bucky Burris right here. They were two of probably the most famous Delta guys, I thought, in the thing. And then when Carney went in the Twin Otter, his pilot only had one leg. He had a peg leg. And but this was his co-pilot, this guy here. And it was a good get-together. I had a really good time. But that was a pre-retirement ceremony for that airplane. And then they were trying to find a museum to put this airplane into, because it not only had a tremendous history about Desert One and some other, but there were other events that this airplane had been involved in that they thought this airplane needs to be preserved. And they were finally able to get the Carolina Aviation Museum said, hey, we'll take it. So that's where it is now. So if you ever get down to Charlotte, you go out to the Aviation Museum out there. It's sitting out there on the tarmac. 1857. This was a picture taken at the retirement ceremony. This is Ken Poole, my nav, Dave Chesser, my load master. This was my one of the fuels guys who later went on to get a degree and retired as a major in the Air Force. And then, but we were there. That was the dedication. We went down. We kind of gave this briefing to them for the dedication also. So we thought that was kind of neat. And then that's my bunch again. So I guess we can open for questions. I'm sorry we went so long, but it's really hard to cram all this information into a short period of time. And so we'll entertain any questions that you might have that you just you need to know. Or you can talk to us afterwards. We're going to have a social, I think, that we can get together with. Good.
What was in the box?
In the box, I can't remember what that was. We had a lot of combat, camouflaging and stuff like that, but I think there were a couple of those boxes.
No, so the box that the Brits dropped off for you guys.
Oh, it was beer. I'm sorry. It was beer. Yeah, in fact, it was cold beer. So that what was in the boxes.
Oh, one thing we didn't mention, that plane that we landed in, the first plane we landed did a hard landing.
Oh, yeah.
And bent spars in the wings, and then had to do it on a one-time flight back to Ontario to redo the wings after that hard landing.
Yeah, it actually cracked the wing from that landing. I heard guys say that's the hardest landing I ever lived through. Okay, thank you.